Hello everyone and welcome to Plugged Into Heritage. Today we are filming from the courthouse and it's a beautiful sunny day out. So today we won't be telling you about history, we'll be telling you about her story and all about the life of Leora Jane Simpson. Today we have here with us Bruce Thompson, the president of Queens County Heritage. So Bruce, what can you tell us about Leora and her bird collection?
Well, thank you, Victoria, and hello everyone. Leora Jane Simpson was born here in Gagetown on the 23rd of July in 1856. She was the daughter of Edward Simpson, who was a merchant and also the postmaster in the village. And her mother was Elizabeth Ebbett, a descendant of a prominent, well-known Queens County Loyalist family. So they lived in a large white house on Front Street, which is still there. That was the family home. Leora was part of a fairly large family with other sisters as well. Now, we do have a photograph of Miss Simpson. She never married. This is quite late in life, so she is a very old lady at this point. But she is very interesting to Queens County history because in a day and age when most young women were getting their early education, but then finishing school and rarely going on to careers, Miss Simpson and her sisters actually embarked on various careers. Most young women, after they finished school, they would work on their trousseau and learning the household arts in preparation for marriage. As creative outlets, they might often do textile manufacturing of quilts and linens and embroidery, perhaps even painting of ceramics, china painting, or oils and watercolors as a creative outlet. The Simpson household was a little bit different, and for some reason that we're not quite sure of, Leora took up the skill of taxidermy. And over the course of her long life, she lived until 1951, she taxidermied well over 100 bird specimens. And we have hawks, and we have owls, and we have ducks, and we have geese, and songbirds, and shorebirds, and others. So today, we just brought out a little selection of the specimens that we have here in the collection. At various times, Leora Simpson did identify herself as a taxidermist on official documents, and in the 1891 census, she lists her occupation as taxidermist, even though she's still living at home. Her father had died at that point, and her mother was running a boarding house in the house down on Front Street. A little bit later in life, Leora and her sister Ella were the postmistresses, following in their father's footsteps in managing the post office for many years. Ida, another sister, she actually became a nurse. So again, we often think that the Simpson household was put a premium on education and professionalism for women. The earliest specimen that is dated, and actually the only specimen that is dated, is the small Merlin hawk we have here on the table. And I'll just pick it up very carefully. And we can see on the back the label, which I've got it upside down. We'll turn it around so you can see it, and it's dated the 6th of September, 1882. So she would have been doing this when she was in her mid to late 20s. All of the other specimens that we have are undated, but we are pretty clear that she was doing this type of work well into her 70s, so that would have taken them into the 1920s and 1930s, and as evidenced by the photograph that we have of her and her huge collection. So we have a few examples of her additional work, and if you look at the photograph, you can see some of these specimens that are in the cases in the background. One of them is this example of the great blue heron that we still have with us. We have a pileated woodpecker. And these are the massive woodpeckers that make a lot of noise, and you're very lucky if you get to see one with the bright red on its head. Another type of woodpecker is a small hairy woodpecker, which also makes a great deal of noise, but it's very impressive to see one of the pileated woodpeckers. We have a whole series of ducks, but we chose to bring out these two. Here we have a hooded merganser, one of her beautiful specimens, and remains in fairly good condition. And one of our favorites is the wood duck, with its very vibrant coloring. And it's interesting, I wish we knew the dates on some of these, because it would be interesting to see how her skills developed over time. We do have some that have some of these interesting mounts, and like the wood duck having the wings spread out. We do have a seagull, great herring gull with the wings spread out, but most are sort of traditional looking specimens with the wings at their side. But this wood duck is pretty spectacular because she decided to do it in such a way that you can see the wings spread out and the sheen of the various colors that you might not see if the wings were placed at its side. And our final example today, this is one of the most spectacular pieces in the collection, even though it's mostly pure white. It is a very special specimen, and this is a snowy owl. And not unusual to see in Queens County, but not impossible to see in the county from time to time. But it's a special treat when you can actually see a snowy owl. This is a beautiful specimen. Just turn it around to the back, and you can see the various speckles on the back and on the wings. The owls are always fascinating for everyone to look at, especially when we have school kids come in. The claws of the owls are so impressive, and on the hawks as well. Seeing them this close, you certainly get an idea of when these birds are hunting or when they're fishing, what they can actually grab a hold of with their claws is really quite impressive.
Do we know how she acquired these birds?
Well, that's a really good question, and there's sort of two parts to the answer to that. The first part is we really don't know whether she acquired the specimens herself or whether people brought them to her. If she was listing her occupation, she may have had a little business where she was doing this. The other part of it is that in the late 19th century, when she was first starting to do this, and into the early 20th century, views on conservation practices were much different than they are now in the 21st century. And many people who had an interest in wildlife and natural history and preservation thought the best way to do that would be to acquire a specimen and have it available in a museum or have it available in a university for research purposes, so that you could examine it up close and that you would get a better idea of the animals. So that has changed a lot now in the 21st century, where we look at conservation practices, keeping the specimens in the wild. And only if there's an accident or if something has happened to a bird would you acquire it for a museum collection or a university research type of collection. So views on conservation and preservation were quite different at the time that Miss Simpson was doing her work.
What happened to the birds after Leora passed?
Well, Leora, as I said, she was doing some interesting things with her life besides taxidermy in the village. But when she died in November of 1951, she actually bequeathed the bird collection, at that point numbering well over 100 specimens, to the local school, the Gagetown School. And they traveled with the grammar school when it moved from its site just down the hill from the courthouse to the new school down at the other end of the village. And they were kept in the library of the school in a very dark corner in their original cabinets. I remember them back in the 1970s, and anyone from my generation will remember them being in the cabinets in the school library. And then just over 20 years ago, the school gave the collection to Queens County Heritage, and they've been here ever since. We've had them out on exhibit every now and again, but then other times we put them away so that we can, like all of our collection, we have them out at certain times so that we can preserve them for the future. So today, this is a little opportunity to see some examples of the specimens.
Well, what happened to Miss Simpson?
Well, as I say, she listed herself as a taxidermist, but she and her sister Ella were also the postmistresses of Gagetown for many decades. Her sister Ida was a nurse, as I said. In 1935, Leora and her sister Ella received the King George V Silver Jubilee Medal for their service to the community. In addition, the Simpson women were very accomplished cooks, and we have a recipe for one of their cakes, and they were known for making vanilla cakes of swan's down texture. And we've made those cakes here for special occasions, and the recipe really tests out really well. So not only were they very accomplished, professional business women, but they were also excellent bakers as well. So Miss Simpson, she continued to live on her house on Front Street. Her sisters passed away, and then she passed away in November of 1951. But her legacy lives on with the great work and the many examples of this very unusual profession for a woman in the late 19th and early 20th century.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and thank you everyone for watching. I just want to let you guys know that unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we've had to close the Tilly House, the Loom Crofters, and the Flower House, but the courthouse remains open through July and August, Tuesday through Saturday. We will also be doing outdoor walking tours of Front Street, departing at 3 p.m. on Saturdays from the Tilly House. Please join in our Spirits of Gagetown fundraiser and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website. See ya, have a great day.
Fly away, little birdie.